Across 1,000 ruined worlds, carved in obsidian pillars, etched into dying data cores, whispered in the final screams of species long extinct, the same phrase echoed, "They guard a greater nightmare." It was always followed by the same set of galactic coordinates, a blue planet, third from its star, largely unremarkable by astrophysical standards, modest in size, gravity, and output, orbiting a day-type main sequence star, tucked into an arm of the Milky Way too insignificant for ancient empires to bother charting. And yet, for reasons the Galactic Confederacy couldn't comprehend, civilizations with millennia of advancement, entire star-spanning species, had collapsed after making contact with that one world. The Vayari Empire called it Cell 3. The natives called it Earth, primitive, profusion, scattered nations, absurd social structures. Low orbital presence, said High Executor Varuan, his four-fingered hand flicking through data readouts mid-air. There is nothing here, no threat, no technology of note. Only noise and savagery. And yet, murmured research speaker Halixis, 22 separate species marked it as an extinction class hazard. None returned. They stood aboard the Caesura Ascending, the flagship of the Vayari exploratory fleet. It hovered in high orbit above Earth, cloaked, shielded, observing. 20 vessels followed behind it, warships, science platforms, and one mobile archive, a black obelisk older than the Confederacy itself. They had found the warnings buried in the ruins of the Corellian vaults. Then again in the ashes of the Caesuran Hive Library. On the fractured moons of the extinct Delari Communion, the same phrase, the same coordinates. No details, no context, just dread. This was not the first time a species had encountered a planet too dangerous to engage. Rogue is, dimensional anomalies, starborn predators. The galaxy had its horrors. But Earth, it was mundane. Until you looked closer. Varuan sighed and waved the data away. We'll send a scout pod. Psychological survey. Atmospheric and cultural sampling. Then, if safe, infiltration. And the ... warnings? Halexis asked carefully. Varuan gave a humorless smile. Superstition. Prophecy. Weak minds see darkness where there is only ignorance. The scout pod detached and plunged toward the southern pole. Earth's atmosphere roared against its hull. Cloaked, silent, it buried itself in the ice sheets of Antarctica, far from any human presence. Or so they believed. What it found was not ice. Miles beneath the surface, their drills struck alloy. An alloy not known to human industry, nor to any in the Vayari database. It pulsed with strange quantum readings, resonating in patterns too complex to be noise. A vault, buried deeper than any human could have constructed. Locked with mechanisms they couldn't decipher. A soft hum began, not from the vault, but from the minds of the Vayari operatives. They began reporting dreams, hallucinations, thoughts that weren't theirs. Visions of cities burning in stars, of ancient titans, chained in darkness, of humanity standing vigil, weapons drawn not outward, but inward, as if defending the galaxy not from attack, but from themselves. Halixis called an emergency meeting. There's something down there, something sealed. Possibly pre-human. Possibly ... prehistory. We've seen this before, Varuan snapped. Mass hysteria. Unshielded minds encountering a psychic field. We have protocols. Science will explain this. But then the Caesura Ascending received a data transmission from the scout pod. Unintended. A glitch. A fragment of human broadcast radio, weak, ancient, looping across the ice. It played through the ship's translation systems by accident. Voice crackled through. In his house at Rayleigh a dead Cthulhu waits dreaming, ... double quotes, a pause, then laughter. Children laughing, Halexis froze. That's human fiction, a myth, Varuan sneered. Exactly. They tell ghost stories to each other. They believe in monsters. Yes, Alexis whispered. But they laugh at them. The crew looked at him. He pointed toward Earth. They teach their young to mock fear, to play with horror like it's a toy, to write nightmares into games, to worship stories of extinction and apocalypse. And not only do they survive, they thrive. Silence followed. Then came the ping from the vault. A signal, not from it, from something responding to it. In deep space, far beyond Earth's orbit. A response that should have taken years to reach. It arrived in seconds. Breaking causality. Alexis felt something ancient stir at the edge of his mind, like something watching through the eyes of a curious, grinning child. Back on Earth, in a crowded city, a young boy paused at a bookstore window. He stared at the cover of a dusty, forgotten tome of old horror stories. His eyes glowed faintly, just for a second. Before he blinked it away. In the ice below, the vault thrummed. And the Veyari's instruments, designed to detect gravitational anomalies, began to spin into chaos. And far away, in the memory cores of a long-dead Caesarean warlord, the final words ever recorded before the end of his race were whispered once more. We thought they were guarding themselves, but they were never the danger. The skies above Earth were quiet. Too quiet. From orbit, the Veyari ships hovered, unseen, silent sentinels above a seemingly indifferent world. The Caesura ascending maintained its low-gravity trajectory, cloaked and shielded, absorbing terabytes of human data every minute. Music, broadcasts, satellite feeds, cultural data, social media streams. It was all so chaotic, yet somehow purposeful. Patterns laced with madness. Executor Veruan grew agitated with the lack of tactical clarity. Where are their planetary defenses? No railguns, no defense. Satellites, no auto-interceptors? They still use combustion engines. Correct, Alexis murmured, eyes fixed on a stream of human cinema footage. And yet they survive. With a planetary kill ratio second only to the Veyari military. Internal warfare has killed more of them than most species lose in interstellar conflict. Veruan scoffed. They're animals. Animals don't build stories like this, Alexis replied, shifting the screen. It played an old human film, black and white, crackling with time. A creature made of shadow devoured cities while humans fought it with nothing but rifles and courage. They teach their young that horror must be faced, not run from. Faced. The executor dismissed him with a wave. We're wasting time. Begin Phase 2, infiltration units only, no contact. Tiny reconnaissance drones entered the atmosphere under stealth fields, drifting through populated regions like invisible ghosts. Some nested in human satellites, others perched on buildings, power grids, and deep-sea cables. The data they returned was inconsistent. The language variance was expected, but emotional inconsistencies were not. Humans simultaneously worshipped peace and glorified war. They wept at small deaths and yet casually created extinction-level weapons. They feared oblivion, yet stared at it through telescopes, smiling. In New York, a Veyari observation drone followed a school field trip to a museum. Children laughed and screamed joyfully in front of a replica of a T-Rex, an apex predator from a past extinction. One child, barely old enough to form full sentences, mimicked its roar and said, "I'm gonna eat the moon." It should have been meaningless, but in the ship's databanks, the I flagged a connection, a fragment from the Corellian warnings, written 90,000 years ago. They jest at death, even their young. Especially their young. On the edge of Earth's northern pole, another team uncovered a human research station long since abandoned. Inside were books, damaged computers, and a wall covered in notes, all circling a map, a specific region in Antarctica. The same region the Veyari vault had been found beneath. Human teams had been here before. Multiple times. Each time, they vanished without global incident. Why didn't they investigate further? A Veyari scout asked. Because they already knew, Alexis whispered. They sealed it. The team had also retrieved a battered human journal, pages crumbling but legible. They come in dreams now, not just mine, the whole station. We see the thing, still asleep. Sometimes it speaks, but it uses our voices. It doesn't understand love, only watching, only hunger. But the worst part is that it sees us laugh at it. And it laughs back. The next data spike came from Earth's virtual networks. The AI flagged thousands of unrelated phrases across time, culture, language, all involving some variation of the same archetype, the sleeping god, the buried darkness, the watcher beneath. Myth? Certainly coincidence? Impossible. In a server farm in Tokyo, a human game was being played by millions. The antagonist was a vast, unknowable entity that corrupted minds, devoured stars, and whispered to the player through their own internal monologue. The game had a 5-star rating. Fans made plush toys of the monster. They made it cute, Alexis said, his voice shaking. They made extinction adorable. Varun refused to believe it. You think this is intentional? That they ... Prepare. For fear? No, Alexis said. I think they prepare others. I think they're conditioning us, any who look too close. Then the scout team beneath the ice sent their final report. There was another vault, deeper, older, but not sealed. Opened. The readings around it grew chaotic. Gravity inverts for 0.3 seconds. Time hiccups in a localized bubble. One VRE scientist begins bleeding from his eyes and speaking fluent Scissoran, a dead language. And still, the humans did nothing. No military alert. No atmospheric response. No retaliation. As if they were watching. Waiting. Then a new transmission appeared in the Caesura Ascending's CUM systems. Unencrypted. Open frequency. Not from Earth, not from the Vayari, from a probe long thought lost. A Dalari observation drone that vanished 2 millennia ago. Its last recorded location, Earth orbit. The transmission was simple. One line. One voice, clearly human. You think we're what the warnings were about? A beat of silence. Then, we're just the ones who stayed behind. Every console aboard the Caesura Ascending screamed in error. Power fluctuations. Quantum particles. Behaving erratically. AI cores began repeating ancient Earth lullabies, and Alexis looked toward Earth with sudden cold realization. What if we're not studying them? What if it is studying us, through them? Somewhere on the planet's surface, a human looked up at the sky. Not with fear, but with curiosity. As if knowing someone was finally looking back. It began with the silence. The scout team beneath Antarctica, 16 Vayari scientists and warriors, equipped with Class V exosuits and psionic dampeners, had gone dark. No distress signal. No final transmission. Just nothing. Varun stood motionless on the command deck, mandibles tight, breath shallow. How does an entire squad vanish with no trace? Alexis didn't answer. He was staring at the display where the vault's biometric readings had begun to shift again. The strange alloy composing the structure now emitted pulses at precise intervals, 11 seconds apart, not random. Not background noise, a code. They tried deciphering it with Vayari algorithms. It failed. They ran it through Dalari cipher matrices. Failed again. Then one junior technician, a bored linguistics intern working the night shift, got curious. On a whim, she fed the signal through a human decoding module. Specifically, something she found in Earth's old internet archives. An ancient cipher once used by an organization called the NSA. It unlocked instantly. The message read, "We hold IT in our dreams. Do not wake the guardians." The technician screamed and collapsed into seizures. Medical teams arrived, but she was gone, not physically, but mentally. Brain activity was frozen, as though something else had claimed her mind mid-thought. Her final spoken words, before she went still, were in perfect, unaccented English. We made them forget, but they built stories to remember. Varun slammed his fist against the interface console. Enough of this mysticism. We strike now, deploy warforms, bring the vault up. We tear it apart and learn what secrets they guard. Halexis turned to him, appalled. You'd trigger an unknown containment field without knowing what it holds? It holds nothing, Varun shouted. This entire species is a distraction, a clever bluff. They build myths and madness around a rock and call it a god. But, even as he spoke, Earth's response changed. For the first time, global data traffic slowed. Military satellites shifted their angles. Submarines, human submarines, began to move. Not toward the vault, but away from it. As if giving the Vayari space. Permission. Varun didn't care. Let them watch. Let them learn their place. The Vayari warforms descended. Giant constructs, 20 meters tall, armored with neutronium plating, equipped with plasma disruptors and antimatter lances, enough to level entire cities. They landed at the edge of the excavation site. They began to dig. The upper vault groaned in protest, like metal-resisting memory. But beneath it, the second vault opened on its own. No resistance, no defense grid, no force field. Just a gentle hiss of air, ancient, cold, and too perfect in its oxygen-nitrogen balance to be coincidence. Inside, a single chamber, stone, metal, wood. And at the center, a chair built for a human frame. Empty. No body, no occupant. Only a helmet, resting on the armrest. Designed not for protection, but for containment. The warforms hesitated. Their AI cores picked up low-frequency resonance inside the chamber. A human voice. You're early. Varun watched from orbit as every warform suddenly seized, locked in place, unmoving. Status readouts screened errors, memory corruption, logic paradox, recursive hallucinations. These machines were built to withstand psionic warfare, but whatever this was, it wasn't war. It was story. One warform turned its head slowly, despite its controls being locked. Onboard cameras transmitted the image of its faceplate, and the reflection within it, a man. Tall, indistinct, standing behind the chair in the shadows. Not physically present, not by any scan or sensor, but the warform saw him. Then it knelt. Varun recoiled. Impossible. They don't possess self-awareness. Halexis's voice was dry. They do now. The helmet on the chair lifted into the air, levitating. Slowly it turned toward the warform. The moment it faced the central command unit, the entire platform screamed in null energy pulses and went dark. The warforms collapsed. Then, Earth spoke again, not through radio, through dreams. Across the Vayari fleet, personnel collapsed mid-task, clutching their heads. They dreamed, but all the same dream. A man in armor, standing before a black gate, holding it shut with bloodied hands, and behind him, something vast, something laughing, as if waking. In the dream, the man turned to them, smiled, and said, "You shouldn't have come here. We never asked for help. We never asked to be remembered. We chose to be forgotten." Varun screamed to sever the dream channel, but it was embedded now. Not transmitted, imprinted. The entire fleet had it, like a virus of memory. The image of the chair, the empty helmet, the promise of a watcher returning on the planet's surface. Human internet traffic resumed. Not in panic, in celebration. A global trend emerged. Across a dozen platforms, languages unified in irony. They found the chair. Halexis slumped in his seat, pale and shaking. They knew we would come. They've always known. The stories were left as breadcrumbs, not warnings, triggers. Varun's eyes burned with rage. Then we destroy the vault. No, Alexis said quietly. You don't understand. The vault isn't what they guard. He looked down at Earth, trembling. They are. They came in force after the warforms fell. Executor Varuan made the only decision a Vaari warlord could. Annihilation. Earth had mocked them, infiltrated their minds, seized their machines. It didn't matter if the humans were primitive or psychic puppets or some ancient containment cult. They had become a threat. And the Vaari exterminated threats. All ships. Varuan commanded. Prepare orbital strike. Burn the ice, shatter the vault, sterilize the cradle. In the silent hum of space, the Vaari fleet unfurled. Like wings of a bird of prey, gleaming starcruisers angled toward the pale blue dot. Energy capacitors charged, glowing with the power to melt continents. It was overkill, but necessary. The humans had to learn what real power looked like, and yet, Earth still didn't respond. No planetary shield. No retaliation. Just a whisper, again in the minds of the crew. This time, not in English. Not in Vaari. It was something deeper. Fear. Not of you. Of what you might wake. Alexis stood frozen at the observation deck. The dream still clung to his mind. The man in the armor, holding the black gate. He remembered that look, not of defiance or hatred, but duty. Varuan, Alexis warned. You must not fire. We've already done what they feared. We've opened the door, but the executor was beyond listening. I will not be made a fool by a dead world clinging to bedtime stories. The order was given. Aboard every ship, Doomsday-class plasma lances ignited. Blue suns formed along the hulls, then launched, screaming toward Antarctica. Then, Earth moved, not its people. Its machines. Satellites long believed defunct blinked awake. Not military, but commercial. Weather monitors. Obsolete GPS constellations. Communications satellites from the 1970s. Every single one reoriented and focused. The Vaari strike beams hit the ice and vanished, not exploded. Not reflected. Erased. As if space itself had opened a crack and swallowed them. An impossible phenomenon. A theoretical paradox, one explained moments later by Earth's oldest satellite, Voyager I. Its ancient broadcast began playing on all Vaari screens. The golden record, once a peaceful message to alien civilizations, now played a modified track. Beethoven's Symphony No. 7 began. But underneath the music, a hidden layer pulsed. Mathematics. A human-designed field modulation equation. And the terrifying realization, humans had embedded a spatial dampening algorithm in a centuries-old probe, designed to collapse incoming energy waves. Not just theory. Proof. The Vaari strike had never hit because the planet knew how to fold the shot into silence. Varuan's claws clattered on the control console. How? This is perfusion Earth. Alexis only stared at the data coming in. They didn't build that defense today. They built it before they forgot. Across the globe, strange systems lit up. Power surges from mountains, seafloors, deserts. Devices never mapped. Reactors that shouldn't have existed. They weren't launching counterattacks. They were activating the locks. It wasn't a war Earth wanted. It was containment. Because something below, something behind the vault, had noticed. The pulse began again. Every 11 seconds. Now faster. Louder. The fleet's SI systems were crashing. 3 ships already lost to logic feedback loops. 1 vessel spun itself into its own gravity well, self-destructing without enemy fire. On board the Caesura ascending, human data began replacing their interfaces. Not hacked. Overwritten. New screens appeared. News articles, Reddit posts, horror movie scripts, video game lore, forum arguments, memes, millions of them, all pointing to one thing. They've been training for this. Not just technologically, psychologically. They prepared an entire species through fiction to survive what's buried. The nightmares are real, but humans made them fun. One last feed overtook the bridge screen. A live video. A bearded man sat at a desk in a dim-lit room. Behind him, a wall covered in maps, string, notes, like a conspiracy theorist's lair. He looked up and smiled. He was live streaming. The title of the stream said, "So hey aliens, you found it." He gestured to the mess behind him. "We didn't really expect you to come this soon. But you poked too hard, didn't you? Wanted to see what was in the vault. Well, guess what? We were trying to forget, all of us, but we left the keys in our stories. That's how we remember without remembering." He leaned closer, and now, "You've rattled the chains." Behind him, the lights flickered red. A low, distant drumbeat began. "Hope you brought a good firewall." The stream cut below Antarctica. The vault didn't open. It unfolded. Dimensions twisted. Space rippled, and a structure larger than any Vayari city rose from beneath the ice. A tower of black stone and bone metal, etched with symbols no one alive had ever spoken. It wasn't made by humans, but humans had locked it shut. Now, something inside began to breathe. Not awake. Not yet, but aware. The Vayari fleet recoiled, not in fear of the humans, anymore. In fear of what they had disturbed. And across Earth, humans looked to the sky. They weren't afraid. They were ready. Asterisk in the command center of the Caesura, ascending, silence ruled. Not the silence of calm, the silence of suffocation, of too many minds reaching the same unthinkable conclusion at once. Executor Varun staggered from his command chair. What is that tower?" No one answered. The alien megastructure, now rising from Earth's polar depths, seemed to defy logic. A city, a weapon, a prison. It wasn't clear. Reality around it shimmered like heat on metal. The air above the continent pulsed in colors not visible to the Vayari eye, but there. Instruments screamed in warning. Light curves inverted. Mass readings fluctuated. Time bent and slowed around it. But the humans? They watched. Across Earth, civilians streamed live feeds. Not screaming, not panicking, filming. Laughing nervously, commenting, making memes. "Yo, is that the SCP Foundation's new HQ? Thulu ain't waking up without paying rent first. Hey aliens, ever heard of plot armor?" They were making jokes. They always had. That was the terrible genius of it. All the myths, the horror stories, the conspiracy theories, the games, they weren't ignorance. They were containment. Humanity had learned that they couldn't fight fear by ignoring it. So they faced it every day, in fiction. They made it digestible. They made it theirs. And now, when the real thing stirred, they didn't run. Because they had already lived through it 1,000 times. In their imaginations, "What kind of species," Alexis muttered, "prepares its young for apocalypse by laughing at it?" He got no answer. Because the Vayari fleet had just been hailed, not from Earth, but from within their own quantum. Net, incoming transmission. Origin unknown encryption. Vayari, Supreme Command / Red Level Clearance Message Body. This is the Watcher. Stand down, the bridge officers froze. Red Level clearance codes were used once, during the extermination of the Vernari swarm. Those codes had been sealed and secure. Quantum-locked command archives. So how had a human, or whatever was speaking from Earth, used them? Alexis checked the packet. It was real. Even worse, the voice matched no human sample. It was Vayari. It sounded like Varun. Then a second signal arrived. From Earth's upper atmosphere. An object broke through the clouds. A human spacecraft, primitive in design, but somehow moving with impossible grace. No thrust, no energy output. It simply glided into position above the tower. It bore no military markings, only a name. Project Ulysses. Alexis accessed the hidden logs. His blood chilled. That ship, it's not on any Earth registry. Then what is it? Varun asked. It's ours, or it was. Project Ulysses was a lost Viari experiment. A long-range sleeper vessel sent to seed psionic beacons on low civilization planets. It had vanished 9,000 years ago. Earth was one of its final destinations. No one had expected survivors, but the logs now made it clear. Ulysses didn't fail, it had succeeded. It seeded the first nightmare. Not to destroy Earth, but to test containment theory. The humans hadn't simply discovered the thing beneath Antarctica. They had been built to contain it. Ulysses had taught them. Influenced their myths. Altered their dreams. 1,000 generations molded by contact with horror. Until fear became familiarity. Until madness became narrative. Until the impossible became a bedtime story. And then, as if that weren't enough, Earth delivered its final surprise. From orbit, Earth's moon shifted. Not in orbit, but in structure. A pattern emerged across its surface, massive, ancient, now lighting up with dormant infrastructure. The moon wasn't a satellite. It was a vault. Inside. Something awakened, not evil, not hungry, a presence, a mind, not the thing beneath Antarctica, but something above it. Watching. Guiding. And it spoke. In the minds of the Viari, the humans are not the threat. Nor are they the prison. They are the locks. You have broken them. Helexus sank to his knees, shaking. We weren't invading Earth. We were opening the door they were holding shut. And now, Varun whispered, it opens. On the surface, the tower shuddered once, then rose. Mile after mile, so tall it touched the stratosphere. And on its peak, a figure appeared. Humanoid. Not armored. Not monstrous. Just human, but wrong, the way a mirror is wrong when it moves before you do. And it smiled. The Viari fleet, once the terror of 3 spiral arms, began to transmit distress signals. To scream across the stars. But it was too late, because Earth had never been alone. And now, neither were they. Asterisk, the sky tore open. Not from weapon fire, not from any force the Viari knew, but from presence. The figure atop the black tower raised its hand, and the clouds above Earth peeled back like paper soaked in oil. Colors not part of the electromagnetic spectrum bled into view. Instruments shorted out. Sensors became blind. Some crew members screamed at nothing. Others went completely still, eyes wide, pupils dilated. Varun gripped the edge of his command throne as a pressure, unlike gravity, bore down on the fleet. This is not war, Helexus whispered. This is unveiling. Ships twisted midspace. Viari vessels with millions of tons of inertia now spun, repositioned, recoiled as if swatted by an invisible child. Every algorithm that defined their targeting, their tactical models, their shielding, broke. Not bypassed, not countered. Just erased. From orbit, the black tower's apex pulsed once. It wasn't a weapon. It was a signal. Earth didn't strike the Viari fleet. The humans did. A dozen vessels erupted from the planet's atmosphere. They didn't exist in any known database. They didn't look like warships. No visible weapon ports, no heat signatures, no mass drivers. Just silent, angular vessels made of materials the Viari couldn't identify. They were old. Not in appearance, in presence. They were the kind of ships that legends are based on. The kind that civilizations bury because remembering them costs sanity. Each bore the same emblem on its hull. A stylized, inverted triangle surrounding a single blood-red eye. SCP-001. The Overseer fleet. They came fast. And without a sound, they tore through the Viari formation. The Ashthorn Blade, a siege-class dreadnought, crumbled without contact. One of the human ships phased through, and the dreadnought simply unraveled, its atoms scattering like dandelion fluff. The Marrow Spire, armed with a singularity core and shielded by a quantum deflection grid, fired. The Overseer ship responded by folding space. Not dodging, relocating the point of impact. The Marrow Spire's own weapon struck it from behind, vaporizing itself across the fleet chaos. They aren't using technology. No mass readings. No thermal output. They're not fighting, they're correcting. Human vessels weren't merely attacking, they were realigning reality to enforce a very simple truth. Earth was off-limits. In the Vayari command ship, Varun shouted for retreat. Navigation systems refused, not blocked, just absent. Space no longer responded as expected. Directions didn't behave. Distances fluctuated. "We're not in normal space anymore," Halexis said hollowly. "They've pulled us into a story." The man atop the tower raised both arms now, and the sky above Earth bled ink. Behind him, the black gate opened. Just a sliver. Enough. From it poured the other things. They didn't have shape, not in a way the Vayari could process. Some saw serpents of ice and fire. Others saw fractal horrors stitched from impossible bones. One crewman swore he saw his own mother, long dead, weeping blood and repeating the word, "Run." But none of them attacked. They stood behind the man in silence, waiting. The Vayari understood then. These weren't the threat. He was, and the only thing keeping him from unleashing the things behind him was humanity, because the man wasn't a god. He was a warden, made human so the key could be carried by a species mad enough, resilient enough to never drop it, even in death. And now the lock had been broken. Earth's entire population was shifting, not dying. Not ascending. Converging. From every screen, every broadcast, every channel came a final message, spoken not by governments, not by generals, but by millions of human voices in terrifying, unscripted unity. "You came to take our world. But this world was never ours. We just held the door. Now it's open." And with that, humanity, the species the galaxy once deemed primitive, attacked. Not just physically. Narratively. Reality shifted to match their stories. Dreams became architecture. Thought became weaponry. The humans aboard the Overseer ships weren't soldiers. They were authors, and they were rewriting the ending. One Vayari captain tried to fire a last strike. A single human ship turned toward him. Its hull bore no engines. Only a single word, myth. And as it approached, his crew vanished, one by one, not screaming, not vaporized. Just erased from the page, like they were never characters in this chapter. Only Varun remained, frozen, terrified, watching Earth, broken, burning, shining, rise before him like a god he'd never meant to worship. And the man on the tower looked straight at him. No words, only a look that said, "You broke the story. Now live in the ending." And then came darkness, asterisk. There was no funeral. There was no treaty, no surrender, no declaration of victory. The Vayari fleet vanished, not destroyed, not captured, simply absent. A few ships limped back to the edge of the Orion Arm, their crews broken beyond words. Minds locked in silence, eyes wide with knowledge not meant to be seen. Those who survived said nothing. Not because they refused, because they words had abandoned them. And in the Galactic Senate, in the ivory towers of 100 empires, one question echoed louder than any scream. What did they see on Earth? A dozen exploratory civilizations. Sent scout probes, not ships, not after what happened. Just observation drones, cloaked in the folds of hyperspace, equipped with emotionless machine logic. The best of the galaxy's science and stealth. None returned, but fragments did, bits of data. Distorted, corrupted, often overwritten by ancient Earth media. A fragment of a movie script. A child's drawing, animated mid-motion. A log entry from a soldier describing a monster that had no shape but wore his face. One phrase kept appearing. Again and again, written, broadcast, carved into metal, encoded in protein strings. They guard a greater nightmare. At first, That line was dismissed as superstition, until the comparisons began, from the ruins of the Mdari, long extinct, from the shattered archives of the Aovari Sanctum, from the lost transmission logs of the Uthan Spiral priests. All said the same thing verbatim, word for word. They guard a greater nightmare, different languages, different epochs, races that had never met. All of them had written the same. Warning, carved into walls, etched into memory crystals, whispered as their final rites before extinction. Earth wasn't. Unknown. It was avoided. It was never marked on the star charts. Not because it was irrelevant, because it was quarantined, a prison world, a sacrificial pawn, a species handcrafted, or perhaps born by chaotic miracle, to do the one thing no other civilization had survived: contain the impossible. They made stories, not to entertain, to encode, to remember without remembering, to build mental defenses that evolved with every generation, to raise children in darkness so they'd never fear the dark. And it had worked until someone broke the lock. Years passed. The galaxy moved on, carefully, quietly. Earth was left alone. Trade routes shifted. Hyperspace lanes warped around it. Like a reef around a sunken temple, no one spoke of what lived beneath the ice, or in the folds of the moon, or behind the eyes of that man on the tower. But in dark rooms, scholars whispered. In libraries sealed with lead and prayer, old records were unsealed. And deep in the archives of the last surviving Vayari outpost, Halixus, aged, gaunt but alive, recorded a message. Not for his people, for everyone. He stared into the lens, his face pale under flickering light. "You think the humans are insane," he began, "and you're right." He took a long breath. "They laugh at monsters, they name them. They write stories where they lose and die and suffer, and then write sequels. They treat cosmic horror like bedtime fuel. They stare into the abyss and say, 'Neat, let's build a theme park.'" Halixus leaned in. "And that's why they survived." He pressed a finger to the console. "You look at Earth and see primitives, but look again, really look." He played the logs, humans charging into fire for strangers, lifting rubble with broken limbs, dying to save art, joking on their deathbeds, smiling in the dark. Then he played footage of the Black Tower, of the man atop it. We thought they were the threat. But no, they're the warden species. They carry the key because no one else can. He shook his head. "And you made them use it." The transmission ended. No one aired it publicly, but everyone heard it. And so from the edges of known space to the heart of ancient civilizations, a quiet respect grew. Not out of pity, not out of worship, but out of fear, out of awe, out of an understanding too deep to say aloud. The next invasion fleet that was planned was cancelled. The research outpost meant to study Earth's anomalies decommissioned. And in the hearts of countless worlds, humanity was given a new name. They were no longer humans, no longer Earthlings, no longer the upstarts. They were the night lockers. The species that guards the door no one else dared even name. The galaxy would never forget, because forgetting meant someone else would have to hold the key. And if there's one thing the humans taught the stars, it's this: you never ever want to be the ones holding the key.